Just saying one more. Okay. Hi, Suryansh. Can we see you?
Hi, so
So,
ca- yeah, can you hear us? Hi.
Hello. Hi, Suryansh. Hi, Prateek. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Before we begin, let me first introduce you to Accords. I don't know if you have heard about Accords, Suryansh, before. So, Accords is an organization dealing with creating learning programs, workshops, and other opportunities in conflict resolution. And we aim to innovate new techniques and other programs where we can work on peaceful conflict resolution. Fireside chat is something that we do every month with the experts who are working in the area of restorative justice and mediation to see what are the developments and how we can bring in more work in this area. I am Akanksha and I have Upasana with me. We are the founders of Accords International and we have with us Jeri Fields. Jeri is a former educator who serves in her community as a first responder chaplain with a long standing commitment to the spiritual well being of all of God's people. She leads a professional certificate in restorative justice from Vermont Law School. Jeri is inspired by the transforming and healing powers that occur within circles that offer safe spaces to be brave and vulnerable, as personal stories are shared openly with authenticity, deep listening, and respect for others. In her professional and personal life, she is passionate about restorative justice and is an enthusiastic member of Restorative Justice family of the DC Peace Team, which is an organization working in DC area, New York. Thank you, Jeri, for joining us today. And for all those who are joining us in the fireside chat, please help us let us know where you are. I am joining you all from Oregon, US. Upasna is joining you from New York, Ithaca. And Jeri is joining us from Virginia, just near the DC area in US. Before we start, anything, Upasna, that you would like to talk to our participants about?
Yeah. Thank you, Akanksha, for that brilliant introduction. So let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm the founder of Accords International. Me and Akanksha, we co-founded the organization, and currently I'm pursuing my master's in law from Cornell University, specializing in dispute resolution and conflict resolution. So I am doing my research in the area of restorative justice, and I have a lot of questions for Jeri. As I already told her, I am uh, I'm really enjoying becoming the student again, and I think restorative justice is such a beautiful field that if you get introduced to the idea of restorative healing, you realize how beautiful the world can be. It is a difficult terrain. It is definitely very difficult to make people understand what you believe in, but once it is done, it is really beautiful. And that's why, Jeri, I really want to congratulate you for being one of the very few people who saw that light in this idea very early. And I mean, today we have the literature, we have the academy are talking about it, we have researches around it, but when you started along with other progenitors in the field, it was a very new idea where people were doubting even the existence of this paradigm shift. So thank you for doing that. And over to you, Jeri.
Yeah. Jeri, your opening remarks before we start.
So, for me, restorative justice is a way of life. And long before I heard the term of restorative justice, I have come to realize that restorative justice is a way of life. And if we can get more and more people involved in restorative justice, what a change agent we will be for this world that is in such chaotic turmoil right now.
Yes, I think I would second that. So restorative justice or approach for me also is how I behave, how I interact with people in my day-to-day life. Also, we have with us Pratik. He is one of our team members from Accords, and he will be here with us. Let us know if you are facing any difficulty. Pratik, if you could quickly say hi to our participants.
Hi everyone. So
Pratik
this
is
is
joining us from
India, New
New
Delhi.
Delhi. Thank you, Pratik. All right. So while we interact and have a chat with Jeri, feel free to ask any of your questions. You can raise your hand. You can also put them in the chat box. And Jeri, we would like to start with your journey with restorative justice. How you came, how your interaction or your how you started with restorative justice in your area. Right now you are working in a lot of programs. What was that first interaction was like?
So thank you and welcome everyone. So my beginning with restorative justice without me realizing it actually began when I was a school social worker at a high school, and I took a group of students to Boston, Massachusetts to talk about diversity and how we should show respect and how we can all work together. Over a period of time, what happened was I ended up having a coach, and some of you know him, Chris, and Chris kept saying to me, I'm with DC Peace Team. We need to get you on board. And I would joke and say, oh, Chris, you just want me to, you're just buttering me up, trying to make me feel good so that I'll sign up for another 6 months for you to be my trainer. Well, as it turned out, I ended up going with DC Peace Team, which has been a life-changing experience for me. And in DC Peace Team, we do a lot of different things. We have nonviolent communication, restorative practices, anti-racism and equity, and peace education for children and family. And so through DC Peace Team, that's how I met Akanshka Nupansa, because when we did an intro, they came to that. And that then led to a partnership between DC Peace Team and Accords International. And so this was really exciting for me. And it's opened up a world of opportunities. As Akanshka indicated, I went to Vermont Law School where I got my professional certificate in restorative justice. I also attended online, because this was during COVID, the Center for Prevention and Restorative Justice in Boulder, Colorado. And this is a program that is set up with their county district attorney. I've had training in trauma-informed workplace, organizations, wherever there's trauma, there's room for restorative justice. And since trauma is everywhere, there is room for restorative justice everywhere. I also have a certification in religious trauma. I do volunteer work with Volunteers of America, in which they do resilience strength training for first responders, for police, for fire, for medics. They also have a program for veterans, people who are in the military, and they started it with doctors and physicians and the medical profession. I've done anti-racism and equity training. I've learned the value and the importance and the significance of intersectionality. I've also done training through Justice Clearinghouse and Restorative Justice on the Rise. And probably most important of all is we all learn from each other. And so my journey continues. It never stops. And I hope your journey will always continue.
No, I love that. Even we are, as we progress, as we attend and deliver sessions, we learn something new every day. And that's true. That time when we first came into the intro to RJs, that was the best start we had with the restorative justice. And that was the best possible way anyone could introduce us to restorative practices and how we can adopt it in our daily lives. So, Jeri, today we are talking about restorative justice programs for young adults, where you have been working on various programs. Before we talk about those programs, I want to know, why do you think there is a need for talking about these programs? Why do we need restorative programs for young adults, for children, especially?
So one of the things that we know is that, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly fine.
Okay. One of the things that we know is that children, and especially youth, their brains are not yet fully developed. They do things on the impulse. They do things because it's a challenge. They do things because my girlfriend thinks I'll be really, really cool if I steal something, and then they get caught. And is this the kind of person that really should go into a criminal justice system that already has so many flaws with it? I don't think so. I think we need to talk about restorative justice. I think we need to talk about a justice that involves people and relationships. It's collaborative, one that repairs the harm more so than this is what you did, and now we're going to punish you, sometimes to the maximum extent possible. And so when we talk about diversion programs, we're looking at ways to stop that school to prison pipeline, because we know that when young adults and even children and youth go into a criminal justice program, they tend to repeat. And the recidivism rate is really, really astronomically high because they become repeat offenders. Also with restorative justice, we're looking at providing time for the person who's been harmed so that there can be restoration with the person who caused the harm, but more importantly, the person who was harmed and how the community's been harmed in the process.
Yeah, I totally agree. Even I have been reading about adolescent brain development for my PhD thesis, and I totally agree that the time, that especially that period of 15 to 20, 21, that's the time when they have this biggest conflict in their mind, whether they are children, whether they are adults, and they try and they act most of the times in impulsion, and therefore they do not know how to react. So thank you for bringing that point, and especially that how the impacts of RJ can reduce recidivism.
We also see that a lot of these children, these young adults, the youth, are victims themselves. They are experiencing trauma. And we know historically that people who cause harm and are harmed end up causing harm to others. So we're trying to break that cycle of harmfulness.
Yeah, I think this point we discussed when we were doing cyberbullying as well, and how to deal with cyberbullying using restorative approach. That a category of bully is a victim bully. The person who themselves was a bully at once, a victim at an earlier stage in life, and wants to maybe take a revenge, protect oneself or protect others, and therefore they turn into bullies. So, with that question, okay, before we go ahead, we have Sal with us. Sal is another member from DCP's team and a charm to be with. Hi, Sal.
How you guys doing? Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yep. Hi,
Everything
Sal.
everything I learned from Jeri Fields, just so you know that, okay?
But I want you to know most of what I learned from Sal.
Oh, that's a loop that we're looking at.
It's a loop, you know.
It's a loop. Brilliant. Thank you, Sal, for joining. You're looking very nice today, as usual.
Okay.
And Akansha, before you jump on to the next question, I would like to request our participants to feel free to just raise hand, unmute, or just jump into the conversation. And even if you don't have a question pertaining to young adults in restorative justice, if you have a question regarding in general restorative justice, then please feel free to just unmute and get into the conversation. Thank you. Akansha, over to you.
Thank you, Basna. So, moving on, Jeri, can you tell us the programs that you're currently working on with respect to young adults or children? Yeah.
So DCP's team is incredible in working on programs with young adults as well as with adults. And we've done online and in-person presentations on restorative justice. We've helped people, including youth, to learn how to do circles, how to do restorative inquiry. And we are working with different organizations on how to do victim offender dialogues, so that hopefully this can be something that will move throughout the nation and beyond. One program in particular that I'm with is in Fairfax County, Virginia, and it's one of the diversion programs that we have. And it's called the Alternative Accountability Program. And it is a program for anybody that is under the age of 18 who has committed a first-time offense. We used to say those levels were low-level crimes, but now we've removed low-level. And so we have done an arson. I've done 2 mob assaults. We are doing larceny instead of petty larceny. And within the United States, larceny is anything that's been stolen that's $1,000 or more. So in this program in Fairfax County, it's a collaboration of 5 different organizations. We have the Fairfax County Police, the Fairfax County Public School System, the County Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court, Neighborhood and Community Services, and then I'm with a group called NBMS, which is a conflict resolution center. And we are the ones from this center who do the victim offender dialogues. When we do those victim offender dialogues with youth, those the parents are an active part of that. Also, through DCP's team with a partnership program with another organization in the district. Some of us are doing restorative justice victim offender dialogues with people who have been harmed in the District of Columbia. Since this is always a voluntary participation, we're finding that sometimes, well, actually it's been all the time, the person who's caused the harm has not wanted to participate. And when that occurs, then we offer them a restorative process, and that seems to be working well. Other types of programs can be in schools. We are, through DCP's team, working with the University of Maryland and training a group of students who are interested in justice and the legal process, and they will, within this next year, learn how to do their own circles, and hopefully we'll get restorative justice throughout the University of Maryland. I've done this with faith-based communities and communities where there has been some type of harm. We'll have different kind of learning circles.
And Jeri, just two questions around this. In these organizations and institutes and the bodies that you work with in different areas, do you get referrals from, where do you get the referrals from? Do you get direct referrals or from the prosecutor, from the court, from the police?
Okay, so for the process within Fairfax County, what happens now is all youth who are first-time offenders go through a screening process. From what I understand, it's now computer generated to indicate that will show up whether or not they have had any other charges in the county. If they meet that clearinghouse, then they will be referred and parents will be informed about this restorative justice process called Alternative Accountability Program. At one time, the referrals only came from the schools, the parents, or the police, and we discovered through our statistics that there was a lot of inequity. And so we were seeing that our people who were Caucasian, white, were being involved in this program more often. And so we wanted to reduce that. And so this is when we went to this screening process, so that every child who is arrested will have an opportunity. When we don't take the really severe crimes like murder with weapons, we don't take youngsters that necessarily are heavily involved in drugs and alcohol or gangs.
All right, thank you. That's really helpful. One question as a follow-up to that, because I'm asking it from the context of India. And is my voice all right now? Is it low or is it now? Am I audible? Okay. So, Jeri, when you are talking about arrested children, arrested youth, getting diverted to you, initially when you started this program, 10 years, 20 years, I mean, at that time, uh, was there resistance from the institution, like police, and what was the systematic nudge? I mean, if you can, I know it's a big question, but if you can briefly talk about this in like 2 3 minutes, like how did you approach that resistance from police or maybe the society in general?
So are you in essence asking how did the program begin?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
initially.
so this program actually began around 2014
Okay.
when there were people in the community who realized that youngsters were going into the criminal justice program. They were becoming repeat offenders, and somebody had heard about a restorative process, and they began to talk about, is this something that can work? And so I think one of the values of the program is we have 5 agencies within Fairfax County that are collaboratively working together to make this process work. And so we evaluate it at the end of every year. What can we do to make it stronger?
Okay. And do you mind telling the 5, are these 5 agencies all private or they are also government agencies?
So 4 of the agencies are government agencies. It's the school, the police, the juvenile and domestic relationships, and then we have a county program for neighborhood and community services. The outside nonprofit agency is NBMS, and they're the ones that help to facilitate this whole process.
That's really brilliant. That's true community collaboration that is evident from it. I
And,
think Kathy has a question. I'm sorry, Jeri, you were
and
saying
Saul had a
something.
question too.
And Saul had a question. Yes, Kathy, I'm just inviting Sal to speak, and then I'll come to you. Is that all right? Thank you. Sal, please go ahead.
Be kind to me, Saul.
That's right. I'm gonna ask the hardest question I could possibly come up with. No, my question was, it seems like there were a lot of conditions for your youth being accepted into the diversion program. So they have to be, well, it sounds like clean and sober, so they can't have any drug issues going on. And I'm just wondering if, one, why those are in place. I'm sure that's for what's intended to be a good reason, but in my mind, it seems like those youth probably are in greater need probably of this program and other resources. So if you can't accept them into yours, do they get referred out? Do they get resources, anything like that? Thank you.
So thank you, Saul. So the alternative accountability program is only one diversion program that is within Fairfax County. There are other opportunities. So for example, with the drug and alcohol, it's not to say that a youth is not using drugs or alcohol, but what statistically shows is that a person who has become addicted to drugs, has become addicted to alcohol, what they need before a restorative process can really work is to have treatment. And so a lot of times they will get that treatment, and then there's the potential to come back for a diversion program. But as many of us know, if somebody is an alcoholic or is hooked on drugs, they will promise you the moon. They will say how very sorry they are. And indeed, they are sorry, but they don't have the resources yet to move forward restoratively. And so they would be referred out to someplace within the community to get that assistance that they need. So again, this is just one particular diversion program that is available in the county. Saul, did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you, Jeri.
Okay.
And Kathy now. Kathy, could you please unmute and go ahead with the question?
Sure. So I've worked in 3 programs with incarcerated youth. The first one was nonviolent youth. The second one was youth who committed violent crimes such as murder and rape. And the third program was a detention unit. So it was really kind of a mix of everybody in Massachusetts. People waiting to be transferred to the adult system, people, just really going to be there for release. Oh, sorry. My question is, I heard a lot, honestly, from the young people. I had to kill, and they really said it like in alignment, like they had to. It wasn't a question in their mind. It was very much like I had to take a life. And I heard a lot the expression, I can't be a chump. I can't be known a chump. I can't be known as a chump. That kind of thing. And I guess so. When you don't work with gang members, I understand different programs do different things. You can't work with gang members. You can't work with um, more serious crimes. One of my things is I think the street workers, like I know in Massachusetts, in Boston, they're very good. They really are connected with the people that are most high risk. Have there been efforts to train street workers in restorative justice? So, I mean, they already do a great job, but they maybe need more training in restorative justice so they can sort of quell things, because that's really their job, to sort of hear things. So I just wonder if there's been an effort to reach out to the street workers.
So there is an effort. To what extent it's successful will vary. I know within Fairfax County, we have done training with all of the agencies in the county that are involved so that they have an understanding of what the process is. We are also in the process of, through NVMS, working to bridge communities together so that they will have an understanding of what restorative justice is. It's a slow process. And one of the things that I learned at Vermont Law School, they kept telling us, many times you will not be able to go in the front door. Sometimes you won't even be able to go in the back door. So look for that crack in the windows. And where you see an opportunity, then begin to talk about the successes of restorative justice. Share how people are being changed and the impact that it has on their lives and ultimately has on the community. But it is a slow process. But if we remember the hare and the tortoise, it was the tortoise who was slow and steady. And so we need to be slow and steady. And I think as hard as it is to be slow, what we're doing is we're building a foundation. And we want that foundation to be as solid as possible. So anywhere that we can share restorative processes, the better the community will be.
Yeah. And just to add in that, Jeri, I think when you say that restorative justice is a slow process, I totally agree to that, in terms of the process, as in being a part of the process as a stakeholder, and also the restorative justice journey in the past 50 years. But I think that's the beauty of it. If it is slow, it is adaptable. It started as a movement which was highlighting the drawbacks and lacunas of criminal justice system, and now it is people are even talking about restorative justice in environmental rights. People have taken restorative justice to workplaces, schools. So the entire nature of restorative justice, definitely it's a slow process, but it is so flexible and adaptable that it is making it um, quite popular in very different categories of people. So thank you for that.
And it is becoming more and more popular. I think one of the things that we need to always counterattack is, and I probably shouldn't use the word attack, but one of the ways is that many people think that this is an easy way out, and it's not necessarily an easy way out. You talked about and mentioned Kathy, about people being coerced or forced to do it. The youth saying, I have to. One of the things that we do in the pre-conference is we emphasize that they're doing this voluntarily. They have a choice. And because they have a choice, they can take accountability for what they're doing and go through this process, or they can go through the criminal process. What they have done is wrong, and there are consequences when we do something wrong. And we're trying to build diversion programs to help them move through the process. I often tell you in this pre-conference, there isn't anybody sitting in this room or on this Zoom conference that hasn't made a mistake. It's not so much that we've made the mistake as how we learn to handle that mistake and how we learn to accept and take accountability for what we've done, and then try to make that situation as right as possible, recognizing how many people that we have harmed in the process.
Oh,
Yeah.
I should clarify, when I say they felt they had to, what I specifically meant is they had to commit a murder, or they had to assault somebody.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just this sense that in their community, they wouldn't be safe if they didn't get known as someone who was tough. Um, so, and then you can talk them through that. But sometimes my issue is that we don't talk to kids at that point. So yeah. Oh yeah, no, I've heard people not want to go into restorative justice because they're like, no, I'd rather serve the time." So I totally agree, and I love what you say. I love how you set the tone of no one here hasn't made a mistake. I think that's because sometimes I work with youth who've been abused and then they're possibly molested. If they've committed a homicide, they very often sadly have been molested. And what I see sometimes is it's very hard for them to take accountability because no one has taken accountability to them. So there's this mismatch, and that creates, I've seen, you have to, and I know you talked with pre-conference helping with this, but just they can be enraged. It's like, well, no one was accountable to me, so why should I be accountable? So yeah, thank you. Thank you.
On the same topic that we are discussing, I have shared an article by a professor of Denmark, Christian Gate, and he's talking about is restorative justice punishment, and he's giving a very balanced approach. Not that it is punishment, sanctioning the state version of restorative justice, making it punishment, but it's something that I really like. So I'm just sharing it for everybody's benefit. Akansha, we can go to the next question, but let's invite Suryansh, and then we
Yeah.
can. Suryansh, you had
Yeah.
a question.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Suryansh. I'm from Indian Institute of Management, Rohtak. I'm pursuing under Integrated Program in Law, BBLLB, from IIM Rohtak. So, my question is that considering India's distinctive legal landscape and most important intricacies, so considering these in mind, how can restorative justice principle be effectively implemented in such a diverse legal and most importantly, my question is to cultural context to provide a fair, equitable, and transformative alternative to the punitive justice system which still prevails in India. And if you read IPC and now it's going to change to BNS, then still the question is there that how can this restorative justice system uh, can really uh, change the punitive justice system of India. So
So,
if I'm audible.
Yeah, you were definitely, and it's a good question. And I think all three of
Okay,
us would like
thank you,
to
ma'am.
contribute in it. Maybe we can, Jerry, do you want to start, and then we can go to Akansha, and if needed, I'll contribute.
So since this question's specific to India, I think maybe if the two of you could start, and then
Okay.
I'll add, if that's okay.
Yeah. Akansha, I'll speak after you.
sure. So, Suryansh, that's a very interesting question. And also, it's difficult to answer it in even in 5 minutes. So, what I would say, since I'm also from law background, I did my master's and I'm doing my PhD in law and restorative justice. So, my topic is how we can use restorative justice for children in conflict with law. So, with regards to your question, I totally agree that the legal landscape that we have in India is quite complex. Also, because, first of all, when we talk about the legal system in India, the adversarial system that we currently have is not something that was traditional to us. It was imposed to us during the colonial time, right? So traditionally, if we talk, our system was more community based. Even if you see some of the areas in Northeast India, there are community based methods which are still present. When I say community based methods, I mean that whenever there is a conflict in a community, the members of the community would sit together, talk about it, and find a resolution, which is in a sense a part of restorative justice itself, that all those who are involved in the conflict, who are the stakeholders, whether they are the harm doers, whether they are the harmed, they sit together, they find what is the resolution which would fit all, which would suit all, right? And also we have the panchayat system, and it has been now legalized in a statute itself, right? So traditionally, if we say, we have community based models for justice. When we talk about informal system, let's talk about the family law. Whenever there is a dispute within the family, instead of taking it directly to the court of law, there are elders who sit together and talk about like what's the problem exactly, right? So if we talk about the mentality of the people, we do want to talk about it, we do want to keep it away from courts, and especially we coming from law background, we know what kind of problems exist in the legal machinery in India, right? So culturally, I would say that there are elements here and there in India and the Indian legal system which are related to peaceful conflict resolution methods like restorative approach, where we can talk about it and find a resolution. Now, when it comes to application of restorative justice per se, now you need to know that restorative practice or restorative approach is different from restorative justice. So, restorative practice is a broader umbrella which comprises of the principles which need to be all the principles which can be applied in any area, whether it is home, whether it is workplace, and restorative justice is applied to the criminal justice system. Now, there are different stages at which it can be applied, whether it is pre-trial like diversion, which Jeri mentioned that when in the programs in which she works, they are related to diversion. That is, you prevent some from entering into the criminal justice system. Then there is during trial, while finalizing the punishment, or even post-sentencing stage. So there are different ways in which restorative justice can be integrated into a criminal justice system. Okay, so I'm keeping it short because we are a little short of time, but I will share my contact details and you can ask further questions. And now I would ask Upasna to add anything that she wants to.
So I think you said primarily what I wanted to say, Akanksha, and I think I just want to add a few things, Suryansh. So your inquiry is similar to my inquiry. It's very normative. How, what, and then how. So it's completely natural, and I think this is the question that most of the people who are getting introduced to the idea of restorative justice have. So, but the other side of it is different countries like US, Norway, Belgium, China, Chile, different countries who are inquisitorial, who are adversarial, who are a mix of both inquisitorial and adversarial, who are common law countries, civil law countries, federal countries, quasi-federal countries, different countries, different nations, different government setups are adopting restorative justice programs. The difference is how they are being implemented. Bottom up, like community organizations coming up and starting programs, and then government helping them. Or top down, like government introducing the law in their legislation. So these are different strategies, bottom up and top down. Again, there is these strategies are available all over the world. All right. So it's the question should be, what version of restorative justice is appropriate for Indian culture? because we cannot transplant US restorative justice, American restorative justice, and apply it in India. In that process, it has to be transformed according to our culture. Recently, India passed the Mediation Act last month. Imagine a country which was so opposed to mediation, we passed the Mediation Act. Like a week back, there was a Supreme Court judgment on same sex marriages, where definitely they did not allow it. But the good ray of hope is that there was a 3:2 majority. Two judges were in favor of same sex marriages. So that's the shift in.
Justice Paul and Justice
Yes.
Chief Justice of India.
Yes. So, without being biased to good or bad, I'm just saying that cultural shifts are visible even in the country like India. And restorative justice is definitely, people are being intrigued. That's why we're talking about it. But thank you for your question.
So I like to think that restorative justice has a cookie cutter, and that all the principles of restorative justice are in place. But in every culture, that cookie cutter looks different. So how can we take the different ingredients for our cookies based on what our cultures have? And how can we begin to shape restorative justice? Again, it's step by step. Another program that has just started in Fairfax is for young adults for ages 18 to 26 who are first-time offenders. And what's happening with that, because there is resistance from many people to do that. Oh, you're just letting them off easy, when we're not letting them off easy. How It's a pilot project. And so over the next year, there will be 10 cases that will go through a restorative justice process with the district attorney's office, in which hopefully restoratively, before the case actually goes to the court for action, will be resolved. And so, again, the process is slow. The process is unique to every place. One of the things that impressed me both about with Akanshka was when I first met her, she told me her goal with her colleagues was to have a restorative India and Pakistan. And I love hearing how there's progress being made. And restorative justice is just victim offender dialogues is just one way. Mediation oftentimes will be an effective tool. It's knowing what tool to use when, so that it can be most effective for the person who's been harmed, the person who's caused the harm, and the community as a whole. And the more success stories we can share, the more excited people will come and begin to realize that this is not just a slap on the wrist. It's not just the easy way out. Because when we take accountability for what we do, that is life-changing for us, as well as for the person who has been harmed, and ultimately the community as a whole, because there is a ripple effect whenever anybody is harmed.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jeri. So I hope, Suryansh,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
we
you.
have touched the tip of the iceberg that your question was. And yes, definitely there are multiple models which can be adopted depending upon the conditions of the country. Thank you for the question, Suryansh. Now, moving forward, Jeri, we would like to focus now on the programs. Like, what does a general program look like that you do with the young adults? And what is the end result of the program? What are the outcomes or resolutions that are often seen?
Okay, so we follow a very specific process in which the youth are first referred. Once they are referred, their parents are contacted, and once the parents are contacted, the program is explained to them. When we get the referral, then we immediately begin to act upon the referral. And we have contact with the person who was harmed, as well as the person who has caused the harm and their parents. Since they are juveniles under the age of 18, at least one parent or a guardian must be involved at that process. We have certain forms that need to be signed that the parents give consent for their children to be able to participate in this. And all along, even with the children and with the parents, we explain that this is an opportunity. This opportunity, we hope, will have a successful outcome. We can never guarantee what that outcome will be, but what happens in the pre-conference can help us to identify and begin to envision how successful this process will be. Once we've had a pre-conference with everybody, so for example, I mentioned to you I'd done 2 mob assaults. So there were 3 girls who attacked another girl. So that meant there were 4 pre-conferences there, plus the pre-conference with the arresting officer. And in this case, it was a person who is one of our school and community resource officers who had been working with all 4 girls, and to watch the devastation he was experiencing was heart-rending. But that process ended well. But I can't put enough emphasis on the importance of the pre-conference, because during that, it's allowing the person, whether they're the person harmed or the person responsible for the harm, to share their side of the story. Many times with the person who's caused harm, because I realize they've been traumatized. I realize that it's intergenerational trauma. I realize that, as Kathy said, they've got to do what they've done in order to be anybody within the community. We talk about that. So pre-conference, during that time, some information will come out about the youth's strengths, because everybody has strengths, about what their desires and their hopes are for the future, how they want to have an impact on society as a whole in the future. I've gotten away from asking a person, what do you want to do when you grow up? Because people tend to give, at least in the United States, everybody says, oh, I want to go to college. Well, college is not for everybody. So I've started asking the question, how do you want to impact this world? It doesn't matter to me whether you want to go to college, you want to go to work, if you drop out of school, well, that would matter to me. But even if that's what they choose to do, what's the impact that they want to have on the world, which gives them and starts to refocus what they're doing and what they're beginning to think about. And so in the process, again and again and again, I will emphasize the importance of a very thorough, taking your time, pre-conference with everybody that's involved. During that time, it's a time for facilitators to assess whether or not they are ready to go forward with it. So I'll give you an example of one that I was involved with, that the process was stopped and the youth was offered a different diversion program. But as we talked with the person who had been harmed in the process, this person kept adding on charge after charge after charge until the restitution cost was astronomical. And so we said to this person, it sounds more that you're looking for a punishment, that you are looking for total restoration according to your standards. And we believe that that would be better handled in the criminal court if you want to file civil action. I don't know what that person did, but we did offer the youth another restorative or another diversion program, which I understand that person successfully completed. So again, we want, at least through the alternative accountability program, we want to see everybody come out a winner one way or another. And to see the changes and the transformation in people is just, it's heartwarming, whether it's done in person or it's done in Zoom. So after we've had that pre-conference, and ideally there are 2 facilitators. Realistically, there are so many referrals that we are now only using 2 facilitators when there's more than one person who's been responsible for causing the harm, such as in the incidents with the mob attack. Once we had that conference, then we have brought everybody involved together. And as they are brought together, the youth has the opportunity to explain what happened. And we ask some deep questions. It's not just tell us what you did. It's why did you do it? What were you thinking? What are you going to do when this happens again and you're in this type of situation? Tell us, and whatever happens to come up. So we dive deeply with them. And the parents are also invited to share what happened when they learned when they had to pick up their child, their adolescent. During the process, then there's an opportunity for the youth to identify who they've affected. And I've had youth initially say, I'm affected. Nobody else was. So, okay, let's talk about how you were impacted. And this happens in a pre-conference. It doesn't happen necessarily to the depth in the actual conference. So acknowledge that, yes, they've been hurt too. And sometimes, like was already said, well, I was hurt. Somebody did this to me and they didn't have any consequences. Why do I have the consequences now? And when they say, I don't know who else, and I'll say, who's sitting in the room with you? Oh yeah, my mom and my dad, they were really, really angry and they were really disappointed. And that begins to open up the conversation. I, in the pre-conference, tell youth that since I've worked with youth for years, I understand you don't like a lot of questions. So the more information you give, the fewer questions I ask. Is that a fair agreement? And they say, oh yeah, I can tell you a lot. And sometimes I do, and sometimes the questions, I just keep rolling the questions to get them to admit the accountability. There was one situation with 3 girls having shoplifted, and the one girl kept saying, we did. And what I said to her in the pre-conference is, yes, we, the 3 of you, did the shoplifting, but I need to hear what you did. And it was incredibly hard for her to say, I shoplifted, I stole. But that was part of the process for her to beginning to understand and to go forward. Once we've had the opportunity for that, then the person who's been harmed, or sometimes it's a representative from the store or a community resource officer, will share their side. And I always tell the youth, the more honest you are, the less embarrassing it may be for you, because if additional information comes out, then it's like, oh, I didn't realize they knew that. Or, oh, yeah, I should have shared that information. Once both the victim, the person harmed, and the person who has caused the harm have their opportunity to share about what happened, then we talk about the harm. And with that harm, they'll say, oh, the store was harmed. Well, let's talk about, how was the store harmed? How does it affect people like your parents and me who want to go in that store and buy an item? And you can see the wheels starting to turn. They're starting to process. They're beginning to realize this is a ripple effect and how the community is involved. Then we come to what is known as coming up with an agreement. And in that agreement, it's by consensus. How can this situation be made as right as possible? And sometimes there are surprises. One that I will share with that's online is about Tinkerbell. And who would have thought painting a Tinkerbell could be what was decided for the restorative process? This youth had stolen a car, and the person whose car was stolen wanted $4,000. And the facilitator knew there's no way this family can pay $4,000. Well, one of the things that each group can do is to bring in a supporter, and the person who was harmed brought in a supporter in the process. He leans over to the youth and he says, I know you. And the facilitators, no, we never have anybody who's been involved in the case. But he says, I know you because I did exactly what you did when I was your age. And this is how I got my life turned around. And it turns out, it came out that this youth really loves to paint and to do art. And the woman says, instead of the $4,000, she says, can you paint a Tinkerbell? And she outlined the Tinkerbell that she wanted painted. And he said, sure. And his mother's saying, you can't paint a Tinkerbell. And she says, yes, I can. And so he painted this Tinkerbell on canvas and had it hanging then in the wall that she wanted. It was 5 foot tall, just like she is. What happened with this child then was the person who was a supporter for the person harmed helped him to get other jobs within the community, and his art skills were recognized, and everybody's life was changed for the better. So most of the time there won't be surprises like that will come out. Basically, with the program I'm with, the types of things in a contract, maybe restitution, writing or saying for letters of apology, and doing community service. Some creative things may come out. Parents have gotten their child some help through counseling, have worked with other community organizations to get the counseling that was much needed. It turned out that one child was doing a lot of stealing, and she just had no control, and so they got her into that. I've seen families turn around with youth saying, thank you, my parents and I were not talking. 15-year-olds don't like to, and at least in America, don't like to talk with their parents. But this process, in a way, helped the parents and the family to come together. So I just love seeing the transformation, the restoration that occurs in a process like this that has a structure, and yet there is a flexibility in it to do and to help the youth in ways that are necessary.
The process, I think itself, Jeri, sounds so fulfilling in itself. Why I'm saying this is because in a traditional process, we do not talk about how people have been harmed. We just talk about, this is the violation that you did, and this commands this punishment. So I think that way is when we are dealing with the harms and the needs of the party, we can also come to, let me know if I'm wrong here, we can come to the solutions which you can never imagine, like painting a Tinkerbell. Who would have thought that instead of $4,000, the harm party would ask for painting a Tinkerbell, right? So not just the process is fulfilling, but I think outcomes can be beautiful, that can help person from recovering the harm that goes beyond, I think, the financial or physical harm in most of the cases. I saw
The other thing that I would add is that victim offender dialogues can occur long after the offense. Sometimes a person will be incarcerated and a person will say, I've heard about restorative justice. I would like to have an opportunity to meet with that person. And it's beneficial for the person who's incarcerated as well as the person who was harmed. I could go on and on about that because we have a member of our restorative justice team with DCP's team who actually did that. And a video of her story was just released yesterday. So
Oh, nice. Maybe we can share the link to that video
I
later.
don't have it handy right now,
We
but
will share it with the participants
okay.
later. Yeah?
we can email it later.
Okay.
Jeri, one thing before we decide to end, because I'm very cognizant of the time. But one thing which we are experiencing here, for example, Cornell campus, they have a mediation program here also, where students, they get trained as facilitators and they perform restorative conferences, sort of a mediation and conference mix with the OSCCS, the disciplinary committee here. The problem is that when there are two problems. Number one, young students, they want to get over with the process, and sometimes they agree too fast. Like, okay, fine, I'll do that, I'll paint the poster, I'll do the workshop, I'll take the training. Okay. So sometimes as a facilitator, it is very it's very easy to say, okay, the student has said, okay, let's proceed. Okay, done. But whether they actually mean it or not, it does not come as genuine initially. Number two, when after 2 hours of discussion and process, you are arriving at the agreement, that transition becomes very this is the main stage which is problematic. I mean, reflection, people are learning, it's with practice you learn, but that transition from getting into the agreement is difficult. So if you can talk a bit about that as a skill.
Okay, so again, I'm going to go back to the importance of the pre-conference and emphasizing how the person is to take accountability for what they've done. And that accountability will include an in-depth discussion of what they did and how it harmed them. I think too often we move too quickly through that part of the process. And so accountability is not really emphasized. And I think the more we can get the person to say, this is what I did, why I did it, how I did it, and how I harmed the person, the more successful it will come out. There are different ways to show remorse. One way of remorse is, I don't really feel bad about it, but I'm going to say I feel bad about it because it makes those around me happy. Some will do it with deep, deep remorse. And sometimes we'll see, although it's not a part of the expectations, but we'll see forgiveness and reconciliation occur. If a person continues to repeat the same behavior, then I believe that there needs to be another program in place other than restorative justice victim offender dialogue, because it becomes apparent then that that person is not taking it seriously. They're not truly taking accountability for what they did. And Connie Dombrowski said, everything we do reflects the impact that we want to have upon the world. We have consequences for our actions. When we're kind, when we are sharing, there are consequences for that. But when we are causing harm, there are also consequences. And restorative justice victim offender dialogues is just one of the ways, one of the tools that's available. Maybe there needs to be mediation. Maybe, as much as I hate to say this, the consequences may come across as there is some form of formal punishment. But I don't like to look at it as punishment. I like to look at it as the person had a choice what to do. They had a choice to live into restorative principles, or they have a choice to experience the consequences, which may be through the legal system. They have the choice of whether they learn from their mistakes, their wrongdoings, or they can continue to do that. So whatever choice they make, not the choice that I make as a facilitator, because I don't make any of those choices for them. We all make choices in life. There are consequences for the choices that we make. And I want to hope that those consequences will lead to restoration, but realistically, they don't always. And so how can we as restorative people look at ways to help others? Obviously, the person who is not taking advantage or following through or is repeating the behaviors needs some kind of support that is outside of what a victim offender dialogue would look like. So where is that support? Where can that youth be helped?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also totally agree that a pre-conference meeting, that prep meeting, really makes the difference in creating that sense of genuinity. And I really loved the way you described remorse in different manifestations of remorse. I think that's very, that's really important, Jeri, because sometimes it was very, even if the student is saying, just for the sake of, let me agree, because everybody in the room will feel they want me to agree, let me agree, even that is a sense of a remorse. Thank you for highlighting that. I think we are almost 4 minutes above our time that we blocked, right, Akansha?
Yeah, so if Jerry can spare 5 minutes more, I'll just ask the last question and then maybe we can conclude. Jerry, is up to you. Can we
No,
have 5 minutes?
I'm fine. I have to leave by 10 till 1 my time. So I can stay around for a few minutes.
Okay.
All right, and I also saw Revati unmuting. So Revati, if you have any question, you can raise your hand. Meanwhile, I'll just ask for the last question, Jerry, which is the way forward. Like how we can improve and move from where we are to a better future for young adults.
So design a plan, have a plan, but don't become paralyzed by that plan. Look into ways in which your community might be open to restorative justice, to restorative practices. Find ways that, and find people who will support this movement. I think there are also different ways that different communities can do this. And the important thing is to empower people so that they feel like they can buy into it. I think also a different way is to invite, I think any new initiative, so long as you have a standardized process that you're looking at, you've got some of the research to support you. You're always going to have your naysayers. I think you need to clearly define the population. You can't, from my perspective and my humble opinion, you can't do all people at all times. So decide what that population is that you want to focus on, and then see if you can't get a pilot project. I think there needs to be a lot of collaboration. The more collaboration you can have, the more insights you gain. We look through society through our own lens, and there are many communities, there are many cultures within our communities that we may not fully understand, we may not even recognize. I think all of the agreements always need to be in writing. Those need to be clear and concise. They need to be measurable. There needs to be a time frame for which the people will follow through with, not just you're going to do 15 hours of community service. Well, it's not up to us to decide where that community service will be, but we can say that community service, and in the alternative accountability program, we give them 30 to 45 days. We also have officers who are involved, police officers that are involved with this, and they have been so supportive. And when those agreements are drawn up, they want to make sure it's not the parent that's being punished. Because if they have to take off work to get their child to go do community service, it's the parent that's got severe consequences, not so much the youth. So how can we take that into consideration? There's a need to ensure that there's equity and that there's cultural competency. Work with your elected officials. You know, my perspective is when something comes from ground up, when you get the community involved, there is more buy-in to it. If it is top down, then what happens is, oh, you're just putting another program on us. We have to do this. And that destroys the restorative justice process. So how can you build it within the community? I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that definitely does. And I would have talked more about the program, like what are the needs and especially from the children who are the participants to these programs. So if you can just talk about from the child's perspective before we end. Yeah.
So many youth need to be heard. and to have the opportunity to say what's bothering them, why they did what they did, even though it may not make any sense to us. But in the situation that was, I think Kathy gave it, I've got to do such and such a behavior in order to be accepted in the community. We need to recognize that youth are under a tremendous amount of peer pressure, that programs like TikTok are encouraging them to do horrible things. We need to help them to understand the impact of what they're doing is having on everybody, including themselves, to have the opportunity for them to share some of their goals, some of their hopes and their aspirations. I remember one youth that I worked with recently. I don't know if you have a Boy Scout program in India, but to be a Boy Scout, the top honor is to become an Eagle Scout. And you are exemplifying what a good citizen is. This young person also wanted to go to a military academy. His parents had been telling him that in order to do both successfully, he needed to become more of a leader and less of a follower. He thought by stealing some objects that he could get the bullies off of his back. And what he realized in the process, and he's so very thankful for, is that he had this opportunity and that his parents are right. He has to stand up and be a leader. So how can we empower youth to become leaders in the right way? How can we empower youth to take the gifts and the skills that they have and challenge them to use them to become more productive as a resident in society and where they're living, whether they do it at school, at home, at work? How can they be role models that are positive?
I think
Yeah.
that's a brilliant way to conclude our discussion, Jeri.
Oh,
And I really want to highlight one thing. Today in the morning, I in my reel, I got a very popular jazz song by Louis Armstrong. What a wonderful world. I would really request everybody to, after the meeting ends, to please go there and just read his lyrics and just peacefully listen him sing that song. And considering the year and the time in which he was singing, what a wonderful world it is. And that's the hope that we are ending the chat with. And because it is already 10-12 minutes above the meeting, I very quickly talk about the Restorative Justice Week that we are doing in the month of November. Pratik has just shared the details about it in the chat box. I'm not going to take a lot of your time, but this Restorative Justice Week is, we are doing this in collaboration with DCP's team, and this will be a 4-day event focusing on restorative justice and its implementation in with young adults in India, in other parts of the world, and we will be talking about the international and domestic trends in this area, and particularly the skills. We will not be able to cover all the skills, but the relevant skills the facilitators need to deal with young adults with restorative justice. Ted Watchell is one of our experts who would be joining us. Sal Coben, who was just here with us, he would be joining us. And there are many other experts and facilitators from around the world who will be joining us. You can see the flyer that Pratik has shared in the chat box. The deadline to register for the Restorative Justice Week is October 25th, which is the early bird deadline. You will be getting a 20, Akansha, am I right? 20% discount?
yeah.
There will be a 20% discount for that if you do it before October 25. But if there is any other request or requirement, you can approach me or Akansha directly. So, and I see Akansha, you wanted to say something.
No, I just wanted to thank Jeri for being with us and sharing her work for young adults, what she has been doing, all the programs, and how does that program work. And I already have the thought of the day from Jeri. Sometimes you might not get in from the front door. Sometimes you might also not get in from the back door. You just have to look for the crack in the window.
Yeah.
So that gives me hope. And thank you, Jeri, for sharing that thought. And I think with that thought, I'm going to have a wonderful day ahead. And I hope you all have too. Thank you for joining us. For any questions that you would have asked or you come across after this session, you can send us the question. We'll try to answer it, and we'll also send it to Jeri for her thoughts, her work. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah.
Feel free
Thank
to
you.
write to us about the session.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeri. So I cannot thank you more for joining us, and supporting us and leading us. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. And for the participants who are joining us from India, have a wonderful rest of the evening. And yeah, let's find the crack in the window that Akansha talked about. So
thank you for this. Thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for everybody who participated today. I hope you're taking away just one nugget.
Yeah.
Maybe more, but at least one.
At least one.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.